Good morning, everybody. It's Alternative Facts. That means it's Friday. That means that it's after Thanksgiving weekend, so we're finally back with you. We are going to look at some of the media narratives that need dissecting, and we're going to start first with the New York Times. So the New York Times took over its editorial page's Twitter account, and openly used it to lobby against the Republican tax bill. Why is that bad, Kevin?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily bad. The editorial board is certainly at liberty to, advocate
they have the right
for
to do
and
so.
against the enactment of legislation. But, New York Times reporters really struggle to command credibility with a significant portion of this country.
Right.
And there's a perception that's held by a significant portion of this country that the New York Times as an organization in every single particular is committed to liberal politics and committed to advancing liberal politics. And so when the editorial board seizes control of the New York Times opinion Twitter and starts tweeting the phone numbers of Republican legislators' offices and starts linking to studies about the Republican tax plan, it just cements the perception that the New York Times is an organ of the Democratic Party, and that just fair or not, it just it jeopardizes their credibility with a significant portion of this country. I saw a tweet that I retweeted on Twitter just a couple of days ago, and it said, "Reporters always hate the editorial side of the operation." And this is a great example of why that's true. I'm sure no one hated this more than New York Times reporters.
I couldn't agree more. And it was really jarring to see the New York Times account essentially act like a Democratic super PAC, tweeting out the phone numbers, tagging different senators, inciting its readers to action is really bizarre because they didn't even include a link decrying the tax bill. It was straight up, as the tweet in front of you shows, phone numbers of their different offices, a call to action to specifically lobby against a Republican proposal. And I don't think that helps the Times' brand whatsoever with the president, with the American people, as you said. And one thing I also want to talk about is about Citizens United and about the Times. The Times is, long and storied opposition to this.
Sure.
When this is what allows them to operate like this in the first place.
So Citizens United, of course, the 2010 Supreme Court decision that authorized corporate expenditures in politics. You could probably say that this kinds of advocacy is protected by the First Amendment's guarantee of a free press, but at the end of the day, the New York Times may not like to think of itself in this way. The New York Times is a corporation. The New York Times is a corporation called the New York Times Company.
Corporate, yeah.
And you can absolutely think of this kind of activity as being, an in-kind political expenditure. It is classic corporate speech that is protected by the Citizens United decision, which they routinely decry. I went back actually and looked at their editorial that they wrote the day after the Citizens United decision. They said that the decision, this was 7 years ago, by the way, would thrust America back to the robber baron era of politics. Little did they know that they would exploit this decision in the future.
In a way, they were right. It's almost like yellow journalism is back. And
there we go. There we go.
Hey, anyway, I digress. We're going to go on to Matt Lauer. So, Sex Toy Matt, as I've decided to call him,
I like
it. He's a disgusting perv.
I avow.
Sex Toy Matt is a disgusting perv who kept a bag of sex toys in his office, would give them his female. Yeah,
this is the first time I'm hearing this.
Yeah,
right now on the air.
It's disgusting. Yeah. So he kept sex toys in his office. Katie Couric in 2012 gave an interview where she talked about how the one thing that annoyed her about Matt Lauer is that he would pinch her on the ass. There's also all these videos that have come out of Matt Lauer making fun of sexual harassment, of him, I think Meredith Vieira, there's a clip where she was picking up scripts and he's like, "Oh, I like that view."
Keep bending over like that. It's a nice view.
He said all this on camera.
There was this. There was one clip I saw. Yeah. This was probably a 10-year-old clip. He had Kelly. Remember Kelly Clarkson?
Yes.
He had Kelly Clarkson on the air, and he complimented how good looking she was, and then gave her the full up and down, right there on television. And you go back and you watch it now, and you can't believe that this is actually happening.
The whole point here,
it was right out there in the open.
What we're talking about here, guys, is everybody knew. It's complete BS that NBC is like, "Oh, well, this is the first complaint that we've received about Matt in 25 years." In the formal process, sure. But if you look at any of the reporting in Variety, in the New York Times, they consistently talk about how some of the female anchors knew, the entire staff knew. It was an open secret. But guess what? The Today Show is a $500 million business.
And you know what? Our colleague Peter Hasson and maybe Alex Pfeiffer or Amber Athey, I can't remember, Our colleagues at the Daily Caller wrote a really excellent piece about the NBC's ongoing problem with sexual harassment. This is not the first time that an NBC employee has been caught up in a high-profile sex scandal, but it's also not the first time that it appears that NBC sat on a story about sexual harassment or didn't aggressively confront it. Bear in mind that Ronan Farrow, the journalist who first produced all of the reporting about Harvey Weinstein that set off the Me Too movement and this deluge of stories we've seen about sexual harassment, brought the story to NBC because he was
worked for them. Yeah.
He's an NBC journalist. He brought the story to NBC, and they sat on it in the interest of protecting their relationship with Harvey Weinstein. And so he was forced to go over to the New Yorker because he had this explosively reportable story that NBC wouldn't run. So here we are yet again finding a major news corporation that's protecting its own interests and sitting on these big stories.
NBC cares more about its movie business and about its connection, or its $500 million Today Show, than it does about protecting its female employees. It's pretty simple. It's only after being decried over and over and over and over and over again has there been any justice in the corporation whatsoever. I honestly doubt that things will even change after this.
No,
I really do.
I absolutely agree with you, and I have to say too. And I've been thinking about this over the last couple of days, and I'm still working this out. So I hope I find my way to success. But I think a lot of people in this business kind of expiated themselves of their own complicity, their own guilt in sexual harassment by decrying the culture of sexual harassment at Fox News.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Now, Fox News has serious problems. Right. I'm not disputing that at all. But it seemed for years that so many people in this business would point to people, like Bill O'Reilly or like Geraldo Rivera or like Rupert Murdoch, or excuse me, not Rupert Murdoch.
Roger Ailes.
Roger Ailes, thank you. And decry their behavior as a way of kind of like expiating themselves of their own guilt. And now their chickens have come home to roost.
Yeah, it's nice to see that. So it wasn't just Fox News; it was everybody, and that makes it more pervasive, pernicious. But it's also bad because it's becoming tribalistic, and it's left attacking right. Nobody's focusing on on what needs to actually be done here, which is protect your actual female employees.
Right.
So. And I want to talk about this on the air, too.
The tribalism dimension of this is so important.
It's terrible. And it's like, think about the mindset of Matt Lauer to go out and to buy a sex toy and deliver it to your female employee and think that that is an appropriate way to act in the workplace. Do you know the type of mindset you have to be in to think that that's chill? That's disgusting.
Yeah, no, at a certain that mindset is obviously enabled by a culture.
Absolutely.
That he himself
that
said
doesn't
at the Today
come
Show.
out of nowhere.
Right.
That comes over decades and decades of looking the other way. Right. It is 100% on NBC. But anyway, that's Alternative Facts. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Kevin Daly, Sagar and Jetty with the Daily Caller News Foundation. Have a good weekend.
Don't forget to check in.
Oh yeah, also check in. Where's my check-ins?